Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just hit that notification button to be notified about our next show. You are live with the App Show. Mike Agerbo here. Got my fellow app nerds, Graham Williams and John Biehler. We got a pretty cool show today for you. Later on in the program, we'll be talking about the latest flavor of Android. A lot of listeners have Android phones out there, like Samsungs and LGs and Motorola's. If you're not using an iPhone, you're using Android. And there's Android 11 coming out, and we'll talk about some of the new features that you might be interested in. We'll also be reaching into our mailbag a little later, taking some of the questions from our listeners and our viewers. And did you know there's a company that's scraping all of your social media pictures to include in a facial recognition database that cops can use to track you down? Well, it's a scary thing, and we'll tell you all about it and what you can do to hopefully get your pictures out if you live in certain areas. Let's look at some of the app news, guys. A new esport is taken over the internet on Twitch. Twitch is a streaming service where the kids and people that love gaming can go in and watch other gamers in esports. What do you think that new game is? It's chess. How many hours are watched so far, John?
So basically, from data a firm was capturing for viewers in May, it was over 8 million hours of chess playing was watched by other people,
which is riveting.
Well, I think some people find it riveting, and clearly it's popular. It's also got a very low cost of entry to participate. You don't need a high-end gaming PC to play chess. And just to be clear, we're talking about playing actual chess, not an electronic version of chess.
And so these are people like real humans playing each other.
Yeah.
And then millions of hours are spent watching these people play chess.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
I feel like we've come full circle from my high school days. I'm kind of glad to see that we're back here. We were talking before the show about Battle Chess, which is an electronic version of chess, where at least you had the satisfaction of watching the pieces beat the crap out of each other, a lot like the Holo Chess game in Star Wars. But fun game to play. Feels a little like watching paint dry to me, but I'm not going to yuck another person's yum. Carry on, guys. Yeah.
What is old is new again. Well, you can check it out on Twitch if you're into chess in a big way. Turo, I don't know if you've heard of this app, guys. It's been in the rest of Canada and finally launching in BC. This is like a Airbnb for cars. I guess you're not going to sleep in the cars, but it's like a car rental app. So if you've got a car that you'd like to make some extra money on renting out to others, this is the app for you. It's taken a few years. It's been out in Ontario for a little while now. I think the hang-up was with the BC government and obviously ICBC, as it always is. But they've come to an agreement. So if you are in the market to rent your car out, you can sign up. And Turo, the company, will cover the insurance on your car to have it rented out to other people, including up to $2 million in liability, which is a good thing.
You've kind of hit something on the head here. And so follow me on this one. Airbnb is actually banned for the most part in many buildings in Vancouver. I live close to the downtown east side. It is probably cheaper to rent somebody's Turo and sleep in it for the night than it is to get a hotel around here. I think you may have found a loophole.
Probably, but the numbers don't look good, John, do they? They've got 65,000 registered users in BC. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's people that want to rent it or borrow someone else's vehicle. Yeah.
But how many vehicles are available?
Right now, there's just over 200.
There's a disconnect there.
Yeah, but to be fair, some of these vehicles are higher end vehicles. You can rent your Tesla Model 3. Graham has a Mini Cooper. You can rent that. So this might be a good way for you to try before you buy as well. Rent it out for the weekend kind of thing and take it for a spin to see if you want to go down that path with a dealership. What's interesting, though, that Turo has said is that in other provinces like Ontario, the average income that a renter would get from renting their car out, and I think the typical use case is during the day when you're parked at work, you can rent out your car. they're saying like over $600 a month on average. That's a pretty healthy car payment.
Or more than a car payment.
Yeah.
In some cases. I guess, I don't know, Graham, would you want to rent your car out while you're not using it? Like, how do you feel about that?
Kind of again, given the locale where I am, down offices down in East Van, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable renting it out from where I work as opposed to where I live. Still, though, my car is kind of personal to me.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm not really sure. Again, with the insurance policy covering it, if there is damage, I think then probably I'm in good shape. But that's a cost benefit where I'm like, I don't really know.
Well, the interesting thing too is Turo is apparently vetting those potential renters quite extensively, and they're also doing things like ensuring there's proper cleaning and sanitation after each rental and all that kind of thing. So it's not like you can just like call up the app and just go. You actually have to be vetted before you can be allowed to rent one of these vehicles. So that might be a little bit of a cushion, but cars are so personal though. Like,
that gives me a bit more confidence. I mean, I'm not really sure, like with the cleaning regime, are they going to send along some Lysol wipes? Because hell, I'll sign up just for that at this point. But do you
have to clean the car, or do you get a third party to do it?
It's a little unclear. It sounds like the renter, the host of the car, is the cleaner of the car.
So, I mean, there's the thing though, like my time is worth money. So I feel that I'm probably spending like an inordinate amount of hours just looking after the rental of this, of the vehicle. You know what I mean? Like making sure that, I meet up with the renter, whether I have to deliver it or not, and then cleaning it after. Like, I feel like I'd be spending a lot of time doing that.
Well, I think they pick up the vehicle from where you are and they have to drop it back to where you are. But I've got an idea here, guys. We start an app, right? And it is basically on-demand car cleaning. So after somebody has booked your vehicle with Turo, you can book me to come and clean your car for you. This could be a big hit.
I don't know if it'd be worth it though. Like, how much are you going to charge to clean it?
Not enough.
Exactly.
You can pay extra to get Graham to personally clean your car.
VIP service, really. I do my best to make sure that is a pristine vehicle every time someone picks it up.
Graham Williams from the App Show. Doesn't get better than that. Did you hear about that app? I forget the name of that app where you can pay to talk to your favorite celebrities.
No, tell me more.
What is that?
I forget the name of it, but Jeremy Piven, if you want to talk to him for 10 minutes, $15,000.
That's quite the premium for Jeremy Piven. I mean, I'd want to ask him questions about the whole like Broadway mercury poisoning sushi thing, but I'm not sure that's worth $15K.
Cameo is the app.
Right, Cameo. Well, that's right. That's a great name for it. It's funny because like many years ago, there was some talk about doing some internal videos at a company that I used to work for with Patrick Stewart, and apparently, if it's internal, $5,000 to get him to narrate it.
That's not bad.
No,
not at all. But okay, so that's a lot. $15K for Jeremy Piven. He was in Entourage and a few other movies. Mr. Selfridge. If you want Tony Hawk, the famous skateboarder, it's only $1,000.
This isn't that different than what people pay to get a selfie with some celebrity at a Comic-Con.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is that I can buy Graham a birthday present of Jeremy Piven saying happy birthday to Graham, for a set fee.
Oh, Andrew Dice Clay, $1,400.
Okay, we're getting into the range here. I think I'd probably go with Tony Hawk over Andrew Dice Clay personally.
Yeah.
But
so, Mike, make sure we get Andrew Dice Clay for Graham.
Totally. But the good news is you can have, I think, up to 4 of your friends on that Zoom call too.
Nice. So you can defray the cost. It's $15K, but not to you. There's 5 ways, $3,000. Now we're talking, right? Is there a payment plan?
No.
Layaway?
Okay. We're going to have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Clearview Ai, a company that is literally scraping the internet and all of your social feeds for pictures of you that they can put in their database for face recognition software that law enforcement agencies around the world can use. They literally have billions of photos. We'll be talking with Ann Cavoukian all about that. Stay tuned. You are back with the program. Mike and John here in studio. We have a really interesting segment now, and I'm excited to talk about this. It's all about privacy, and there's some interesting things happening with our imagery online. There's a company called Clearview Ai that is basically scraping the web and all the social channels for all of our pictures worldwide. And they are using this for a database that many law enforcement agencies can access to do face recognition. If they've got, I guess, a suspect, a picture, they can reference that through Clearview AI's database. Well, in many other jurisdictions, including Canada, you can actually request to see what pictures they have of you in their database. And in some other countries, including the US, you can actually ask them to delete it, but not in Canada. So there's a lot to chew on here. We've got a great guest. We have Ann Cavoukian online. She is the Executive Director for Global Privacy and Security by Design Center, and she used to be the Privacy Commissioner as well for 3 terms. Thanks for joining us, Ann.
My pleasure. Thank you.
This is a big story that I don't think many people really know or understand. Maybe you can give our listeners an idea of Clearview AI. Like how long have they been around? A few years now.
This story is so appalling on so many levels. So they've been around 3-5 years, relatively quietly, until in the last 2 years it was realized that what they've been doing is they've been slurping facial images off of people's social media sites. Millions of them, over, I think, 3.3 million. All, of course, without the consent of any of those individuals. And then they're making those pictures available to law enforcement agencies. So, there's no authorization to do any of this. They have no right to collect your personal information. Your facial image is the most sensitive personal information out there. And when it's subjected to facial recognition fails most of the time. 81%, you have false positives. It's absurd, the whole thing. So now we're adding on to that, if you live in the EU or the United States, they're now allowing you to delete your facial image, but not so for Canadians. Are you kidding me? This is appalling.
I'm dead. If I ever commit a crime in the future, they're going to be able to hunt me down in about 48 seconds once they run through there. But why haven't they allowed Canadians to request the deletion of their photos?
Well, I'm just hoping that's a mistake that because it's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. The whole thing is really just absurd. They have a number of class action lawsuits against them now, as you would expect. And I'm hoping Canadians will now add another lawsuit against them. They have no right to access your information, first of all, in terms of social media. That's not intended to be made available to this company to make it then available to law enforcement everywhere. Imagine all the false positives. This means you would be falsely identified as being the bad guy, the person who committed a particular crime. Try to clear your name in that. When I was privacy commissioner, a number of victims of identity theft came to me, and they were just horrified at how hard it was to clear their name when they'd been falsely accused of doing something. And the first thing I used to tell them is go to the police, file an occurrence report, at least reporting that your identity has been falsely claimed by these groups. With Clearview AI, it just makes it a nightmare on a massive scale.
Do we have an indication of how many law enforcement agencies are using this, especially in Canada?
I don't know the number in Canada. My understanding is that a significant number from all around the world are using this.
And it's John. Is there anybody else other than law enforcement that would be using this tool, or is it strictly law enforcement only that can have access to it?
Well, who knows? I'm not going to trust anything Clearview AI says. The good news is when law enforcement agencies across Canada were asked if they were using this, a lot of times the chiefs of police didn't know it was being used. And when they discovered that it was being used quietly, they shut it down. So that's the good news about what's been happening in Canada. I can't speak to what's happening in the U.S. or elsewhere. I'm guessing it's being widely used right now.
Have any governments stepped in to say, hey, this isn't cool? Like, I just find governments in the technology age here now, they're just so reactive. They're like light years behind when something like this happens. Like, is there anyone leading the charge here?
Not that I'm aware of, which doesn't mean it's not happening, but they're certainly keeping quiet about it if they're doing it. And, people should be railing about this off the rooftops, because it is appalling that a company like Clearview AI could gain access to all this information and think it was perfectly acceptable to do it. Forget about consent, forget about authorization, forget it.
We're talking with Ann Cavoukian. She's a former Information and Privacy Commissioner for Ontario for 3 terms, correct?
Yes. I was the only one who could stick it out for 3 terms.
She's currently the Executive Director of Global Privacy and Security by Design Center. When were you the Privacy Commissioner in Ontario?
Oh, it went 97 to 2014, I think.
Did you ever dream that this kind of craziness would be happening?
No, nothing like this. I mean, there's always bad things that are going on. People, assuming your personal information, using it in ways that were never intended, but never this bad. You see, it's just grown dramatically. Of course, technology fuels a lot of abuse. And the notion of, privacy is all about control. It's about personal control over the use and disclosure of your personal information. Well, so much of that has gone out the window because a lot of companies don't even seek your authorization before they use your personal information. You can still file complaints with privacy commissioners and they will investigate, but technology has exacerbated this enormously, which is why I created something called Privacy by Design many years ago, which is all about proactively embedding privacy protective measures into the design of your operations, bake it into the code so that you can ideally prevent the privacy harms from arising. We're still working on that.
What would you recommend for the Canadian government as far as policy to help protect Canadians? And I think we need protection.
Yes.
I mean, they've captured millions of photos without anyone knowing.
Our federal privacy commissioner, Daniel Terrien, has gone to the government for the past 3-4 years saying we need to upgrade our privacy laws. They're dated, like from the early 2000s. We need to upgrade them now and have some teeth to them. He doesn't have any power, any authority. And that's the problem. So we need to upgrade our laws. And he said we also need to add privacy by design into our law, which was, created by one of ours, Ann Cavoukian, and it's now been embedded into this very strong law in the European Union called the General Data Protection Regulation. Why aren't we doing that here? So we need to pressure the government to do this.
We're talking about Clearview Ai, I guess an artificial intelligence software company that is basically scraping the web and social media channels for all of our pictures to put in a database that law enforcement agencies around the world can use for facial recognition. Obviously, all sorts of privacy implications, along with this. From what I'm reading, literally billions of photos from the internet that's going through this crazy app. And, again, you can request to see what they have, but you got to speak up, listeners, because you can't have them delete it. And that is a big issue. And
everyone should speak up and should insist upon having their photo deleted if they have it. Everyone's got to speak out.
Okay, so the listeners right now, I'm sure a lot of them are concerned about this. Who should they be talking to?
Call your privacy commissioner. Wherever you are, if you're in BC, if you're in Ontario, in between, call the federal privacy commissioner. Just get out there and start making some noise about this.
We've been talking with Dr. Ann Cavoukian. She is the Executive Director of the Global Privacy and Security by Design Center and former Privacy Commissioner over in Ontario. Thanks for joining us today, Ann. I appreciate the thoughts.
My pleasure, as always. Thank you.
You're back with the App Show. Mike, Graham, and John here. Don't forget to hit our website at getconnectedmedia.com. If you subscribe to our newsletter, just got to click on that little newsletter tab. You are entered to win the Belkin Accessory prize pack this month. Includes a Wemo smart plug, iPhone cable, and a special Belkin wireless charger. Can actually charge 2 devices at the same time. Again, getconnectedmedia.com, hit the newsletter tab, subscribe, and you're entered to win in all of our contests this year. Okay, let's talk about Android. If you aren't using an iPhone, your phone is most likely using the Android operating system. There's a new version out called Android 11. And we're going to talk about some of the features and if you're able to upgrade, why you might want to. John, you want to kick it off? What do you think are some of the major things that people get excited about here?
Well, we should preface this that this is still in beta. It's actually going to be released to the public in September. If you have a qualifying phone or compatible phone, which is typically the Google phones, the Pixel line, you can actually download it right now and try it out if you want. I think the biggest feature that I think is finally coming to Android, whenever you install an app, you're always prompted by the Play Store to give permissions to pretty much everything on your phone for that particular app. So one of the things that Android 10 started to introduce is this notion of limited permissions. But Android 11 takes it to another level where it gives you the ability to, as a developer, ask for one-time use permissions. So I go into the app and say the app needs the camera. It'll ask you once for access to the camera, and then the next time you launch the app, you'll be asked for that permission again. So you're not giving this particular app unfettered access to all of your things unnecessarily until you actually need it. But what's really interesting, and this is something that I think is going to help a lot of people with some of the security concerns about Android, is if you haven't used an app for a while and you've given it permissions, it will actually automatically expire those permissions, which means that next time you launch that app, you will actually be prompted again to give it new permissions. So we've talked in the past about some apps that have you've given access to, say, your photo library, for example, in a messaging app, and another app has then gone in through WhatsApp or the messaging app, whatever it was, and looked at your photos that way. So this would sort of close that door and kind of sandbox off permissions for various things, unless you specifically have given it fresh permissions to do those things. And I think that's a really great thing. It's a little unclear in this beta as to whether that's a 30-day or a 60-day thing, like between uses of that app, when it actually would auto expire them. But that might also be a setting that you can set in the future as well.
Very cool. Graham, you've had a chance to look over some of the new features. What's catching your attention?
There are a couple of ones. Priority conversations is a big one for me. I know the notifications on my iPhone, when you see your text messages and your messenger messages, they're mixed in with the other notifications that you get. So conversations is kind of nice because it floats all of your messenger and other text messaging app conversations to the top. So basically, you've got that ability to navigate those separately from all the other notifications that you get. So that's a good one. The other one it's a bit of an iPhone feature that's been brought over to Android, and that is the enhanced screenshot tools. So if you're on an iPhone, you're probably pretty familiar. You hit the screenshot button, and down in the bottom corner, you get a small picture of that screenshot, which you can then tap on, and you've got the ability to do a few different things with. One being you can just send it off to somebody, or you can move it to the Files app, but you also have the ability to annotate it. Right? You can doodle on it. You can draw some, arrows or whatever if you're trying to say to somebody, like, look for this thing here. So being able to do that without having to go back into the Photos app and find that screenshot, then open it up, then edit it. That's a really cool, nicely rounded feature that kind of brings Android to feature parity with the iPhone, which I think a lot of Android users are really going to enjoy.
The other thing that I really like is this expansion of Project Mainline, which is Google's attempt to take the operating system and break it into chunks. And these chunks, like right now, if you have an older Android phone and that manufacturer has stopped updating security features for it, or even just stopped updating the firmware for it altogether, you basically are out of luck. With Android 11, the idea is that they can actually pull out those security updates into a separate little sub package that can then be updated via the Play Store, as opposed to having to wait for your manufacturer or your carrier in some cases to allow that update to happen. So that actually should be a lot more secure for people for a longer term on some of their phones, as long as Google is still supporting that version of the operating system going forward.
Some pretty cool features. Any other shiny ones that stand out? Or is this more, do you think, kind of a security update?
I think there's a lot of stuff going on under the hood. There's a lot of quality of life features. There's some great stuff that they're doing with Do Not Disturb. So you, again, on an iPhone, you can have your VIP contacts and they can break through your Do Not Disturb. So, there's an emergency, they can get through to you. They've allowed for more granular control of that do not disturb, which I think is pretty cool. And some smart home stuff, right? Being able to have smart home controls, right on in a dedicated section of the device that essentially goes across all of those ecosystems. I think this is a lot like Apple's Home app. Will be great for people who are sort of mixing and matching their systems, which a lot of us do, in order to have that kind of control without having to set up scripts or triggers. Really great way to bring that all into one place.
When talking about Android 11, if you're not using an iPhone, you're using Android. They have the beta out for Android 11 now, and I believe the full version will be available, like you said, John, in September.
That's right.
So stay tuned for that. When we come back from the break, we're opening the App Show mailbag. We've got a lot of great questions from our listeners, and hopefully we can help them out. You're listening to the App Show here on the Chorus Radio Network. Back after this. You're back with the App Show. It's mailbag time or inbox time, depending if you're analog or digital. We're taking questions from our listeners. And John, remind people how they can get a hold of us.
So if you go to getconnectedmedia.com and you click on the Contact Us button, you'll get a little feedback form. There's a little drop down to sort of give us a little bit more information about what sort of is your angle or your subject, and just fill in your name and your email and let us know what you have a question about. We can't get to them all, unfortunately. We do get a lot, and so we just try to pick the ones that we can actually address in the time we have.
Let's go to Jules first, and she's got an interesting question. She says she's 80 years old and spends a fair amount of time on her computer, which is rather slow. Her funds are limited, but will the Super Boost really expand or speed up my Wi-Fi for $49.99? Your assistance would be appreciated. I guess it's some sort of ad she has seen online to boost the speed of her internet connection.
Yeah, I actually did correspond with Jules just to sort of get some clarification on her question, and I thought it would be worthwhile sharing with the listeners because I think a lot of people get ads bombarding them about how to speed up your Wi-Fi and things like that, and this Super Boost thing is an ad that she saw, I think, on Facebook. And I can't imagine how a piece of software like that could speed up your Wi-Fi without physically changing your Wi-Fi. So it sounds like a scam to me. I did sort of dig a little deeper, and she does have an older computer and she was using Chrome. So I suggested maybe Chrome is part of the problem, especially on an older computer, because it is quite a memory hog. Maybe try something like Firefox, which is a little bit lighter. It's completely free, and it's not as bad as taking up all the memory, which can definitely slow down your internet. It's not really slowing down your internet, it's slowing down your computer and your enjoyment of the internet in that way.
It's funny, a lot of these things over the years that say that they're going to boost your speed or give you more memory or even more storage. I don't know if you remember back in the 90s, there was a really popular program called Stacker, and it would double your hard drive space. Do you remember that?
It was a compression app, right? So basically, absolutely it would double your hard drive space because it would shrink everything down. The only thing that they didn't mention to you at the time is because it was compressed, it was going to take a whole lot longer to access all of your files. So, correct, You've got double the space and your computer is half the speed. My favorite one was RAM Doubler.
Oh my God.
Which the idea, essentially what it was doing, it was compressing files as they were going into RAM, so it would give you twice as much RAM, quote unquote, but again, really no huge speed boost there. One thing I did want to bring up is the idea of Readyboost, because this is something that people may have heard of. If you've got a Windows 7, 8, or 10 PC, you can use a USB key. Now you want to use a fast one, on a good fast USB 3 port, but it will actually give you the ability to speed up Windows. It essentially gives you a faster disk that it can access rather than moving to a spinning hard drive. You're not going to see a huge speed boost if you're on an SSD, which, quite frankly, it's 2020, you should be. But if you do have an older PC like Jules does, this may actually be a good choice for you.
Yeah, I forgot about Readyboost. That's a feature that is built into Windows. And again, you'll want a fast USB stick and a fast port, a USB 3 port. And to your point, Graham, that will give a little bit of a speed boost to most Windows machines. Again, if you are looking for a new PC or laptop, you should try to get one that has an SSD. That stands for solid state drive. So instead of the old-fashioned hard drive with the spinning platters, this is like digital memory. So it's a lot faster for accessing, reading and writing files. So you'll notice a big performance increase with that. Okay, the next one's a little bit heartbreaking, but we're going to go through it anyway. My wife recently had her Samsung Galaxy A70 factory reset at a phone dealer, and they told her they had backed up the photos and videos onto Google Photos. Guess what happened, guys?
Oh, I can see where this is going.
They did not back them up properly, and the photos and videos are not in Google Photos. And, when you factory reset a phone, it just wipes out everything. So guys, this poor fella and his wife, they have a bunch of priceless vacation photos, when they were down in Mexico, completely gone. Any thoughts here? I almost hate to say that I think they are truly gone.
I would agree. I think they are gone. But there's a couple of things as the takeaway from this is, one, when you're at the dealership and they're saying that they're backing up your stuff, make sure that they actually have enough time to do that. Because if you have a lot of photos on your phone, it's not a 5-minute backup, especially if you're doing over Wi-Fi. And if you have hundreds or thousands of photos, that's going to take a long time. They might not be willing to wait as long as it would take to do that properly. So make sure you do that at home if you can. I don't know the backstory about why they were at a phone dealer to get their phone reset. But the idea is that these backups can take lots of time. Whenever I do a software update, for example, on my phones, I always back up twice. I do one backup and a manual backup button, and then I do it again just to make sure that it's actually fully completed and has everything there. The worst case scenario is that it does everything again. The best case scenario is it's very quick because it's only backing up whatever's changed since the last time I pressed the backup button, which should be nothing. That way you're completely sure that it actually has backed up properly, but also expect it to take a while if you haven't done a backup for a while. The other thing that our friend Max could probably do as well with his reset phone is turn on automatic uploads to Google so that all his photos are backed up as he's taking them, as opposed to when there's a problem at the dealership.
So it's very unfortunate for Max, but this is a lesson for everyone. If you've got an Android phone, make sure that Google Photos is enacted and always backing up your photos as you're going along. On the Apple side, you can also use Google Photos, but iCloud is probably the best way for the Apple ecosystem. Make sure that it's turned on, that you've got enough space for the photos to be saved up into the iCloud. It just makes your life 3 million times easier, and you're never going to lose those photos because they're always being backed up. You'll be able to access them from any of your devices, if you want, or if anything goes wrong, and you're not going to have that heartache. I know there's a lot of data recovery places out there. I just don't think they'll be able to get them off that phone after it's been factory reset. I think one place quoted them like $700. I've seen, $1,000 or $2,000. That's another Mexico trip. I would rather spend the money on going to Mexico again and taking some new photos. So I'm sorry, Max, but we don't have any great answers for you at this point.
Just to jump in, Graham, I think if you had just factory reset it and you haven't done anything else with that phone, there's a slight glimmer of hope that a data recovery service could recover it. But the second you start taking more photos or using the phone and filling up that space again after the reset, you're basically wiping out any possible chance of recovering the data from the storage medium that's on that device.
The ones and zeros get written over. So basically, when you wipe it, they're still there, but the file system isn't addressing them. The moment that you start using the camera again and downloading new apps, those ones and zeros are now being run over like fresh pavement. The one thing I will say, I'm a bit of a belts and suspenders kind of guy. And so I've got everything uploading to iCloud, but you may want to think about getting Dropbox and automatically uploading to Dropbox as well. We have a saying, 2 is 1, 1 is none. So even your online backup should have a backup.
Yeah, with my photos, I've got on my iPhone, I've got iCloud, I've got Google Photos. Somewhere I've got Amazon Photos. I've got these things backed up everywhere. So,
Mike, I just want to mention though, for the listeners that might be turning these things on for the first time as well, basically plan to, if you're going to turn it on, backing up your existing photo library, whether it be iCloud to Google, whatever, be prepared for it to take a long time, especially at home on your Wi-Fi. So if you're going to do this, when you go to bed, hit the backup button and then just leave your phone and let it do its thing. I recently had a friend was switching to backing up everything on his MacBook to iCloud, and it just completely killed the performance on his MacBook while it was doing its first backup because he hadn't done it before. And then he thought his computer was broken. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Just let it run its course. But it can be alarming to people the first time they run it because it does take up a lot of resources the first time you do your major upload, especially if you're on a slower Wi-Fi connection as well.
We're going to have to take a break. When we come back, a few more apps to talk about. One called Barrier that allows you to use 2 computers with 1 keyboard and mouse. Stay tuned. You're back with the App Show. Mike Agerbo here with Graham and John. A little time left to talk about an app called Barrier. If you've ever dreamed of having a PC and a Mac side by side, but just using 1 keyboard and mouse, this is the app for you. Tell us about it, John.
Yeah, so this is basically a software KVM switch, which if you recall in the day, you'd have to plug everything into this little box, and it was a couple $100 usually, and you'd physically switch which machine you wanted to actually use the single keyboard and mouse to control. With this software, you install it on all your host systems, and you can set up either keystrokes to switch or simply just move your mouse to the edge of the screen, and it'll then pick up on the other system.
That is very cool. So what if you've got like a USB keyboard and mouse? Does it have to be wireless?
It doesn't matter. Whatever your host system, your starting system. So say I have that on my MacBook, I can have wireless, doesn't matter, Bluetooth, doesn't matter how I'm connecting to it. What's different is that computer has this software installed on it, as well as your Windows machine, and then you set it in the settings as to what happens when you go to the right edge of the screen. It'll start activating the mouse and keyboard controls on the Windows machine.
I love it. Any idea how much this is?
It's completely free. It's actually on GitHub, and it's a little hard to find. So if you go to gcpix.com, which is our website that has links for products and things like that, I'll put a link up to it there so you can find it really easily.
It's our website at getconnectedmedia.com, and we've got a little subsite there, gcpix.com, where we post all the stuff that we talk about, gadgets and apps. I want to thank everyone that helps put the show together, and of course, Graham and John, my co-hosts, and Christina, the producer. See you again next time.